In today's video, I'm going to share with you an interview with jazz alto saxophonist Josiah Boornazian. Hello everyone, this is Aldo Salvent. Thank you so much for watching this video. Last week I had the opportunity to talk to Josiah Boornazian, great American saxophonist. He holds a doctoral degree from University of Miami, a master degree from City College of New York, and the bachelor degree from California State University. We cover a lot of topics focusing on Josiah's career as a jazz saxophonist, educator, scholar, painter, and composer. He's living now in Texas, where he's building the jazz department at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. Now, let's enjoy this great interview with Dr. Josiah Boornazian. Josiah, welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
For people that still doesn't know about you, who is Josiah Boornazian?
Well, I wear many hats, like you said. As people say, I've got many different parts of my identity. So I'm the assistant professor of jazz and applied saxophone at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. I did my doctorate in jazz studies at University of Miami, and also got a cognate in musicology, which has been part of my identity as well. So I do a little bit of musicology, publishing articles in peer-reviewed journals. I did my master's at City College of New York. So I was a New Yorker for a while. And the second half of my master's was more concentrated in classical composition than jazz. So I've got a jazz background, but also a musicology background, but also a classical music background. Like you said, I'm from California originally. I grew up in the Mojave Desert, but went to college in LA. I'm also a painter, and as a matter of fact, right now I have an exhibition at the Brownsville Museum of Fine Art of some of my paintings. That's why my office walls are a little bit bare right now. Yeah, normally I have my paintings here. And then I'm also an electronic musician, so I use Ableton, and I've actually taught Ableton classes at Broward College. And so I do electronic music, and I do the saxophone with digital effects. So I'm kind of all over the place. I do straight ahead jazz, I do modern jazz with the saxophone with digital effects, I do electronic music, paint, and I'm doing the academic thing.
What advices can you give to musicians in these times where you have to be versatile, where you have to be able to do several things at the same time, like composing, performing, editing a video, recording?
Yeah, well, the first thing is to be really passionate and motivated, and to have that as the foundation of what you're doing. Because it's not easy to make it in any field really in this day and age, but especially in the music world and in the academic world. They're both very competitive, and the industries are both changing really, really rapidly. So no matter what, it's not going to be easy. So you have to have a foundation of real drive and desire to achieve what you want to achieve and to be successful. takes a lot of discipline, a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of focus. And in order to sustain that kind of a lifestyle, you have to really be passionate about music and about teaching. And it has to be the thing that gives your life meaning, basically. And so that's the first thing for me is with everything I'm doing, no matter how small or mundane it might seem, I remind myself that it's a small part of a bigger picture, right? It's like laying one brick in the house. If you imagine I'm trying to build a house as a metaphor, everything I do, it's like just one brick at a time. I'm trying to build this house. So the design for the house needs to be really, really good, right? And then in any given moment, if I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I really don't want to pick up another brick today, I have to have something that motivates me. And so for me, it's all tied together. Even the small, seemingly boring or mundane things we do, like practicing our scales and doing our long tones and answering emails and, trying to book gigs and editing videos and, audio editing, all of those things, they're really important, because they're all single bricks that are moving you towards building your house. They're all the small things that all come together to create the bigger thing, which is that we want to be able to create beautiful art, create music that is meaningful, and that adds beauty to the world, and that helps people to have positive and meaningful and beautiful and fulfilling lives, and then to have the skill set, the mastery of the act of creation, the mastery as musicians and as artists, so that we can teach it and make the world a better place that way, by not only adding art to the world, but helping other people to be encouraged and empowered to create art as well. So that's the foundation of everything for me. I have that as my core set of values, and then I use that to set goals. So for me, it's all about having short-term goals that feed into your medium-term goals, that feed into your long-term goals, and then building structure into your lifestyle, into your daily routine that allows you to be efficient with your time, right? Because you're not going to be efficient if you don't have goals, right? So if you're the type of person that needs a lot of structure too, and I did this early on, I'm at the point now where I'm really good about going with the flow and accomplishing everything I need to without a lot of structure. But when I was younger, I was very disciplined about setting specific time limits and specific goals within those time limits. So like 5 minutes, I'm going to practice my long tones and overtones and make sure I get through all of the overtone exercises I want to accomplish in that time. And then maybe I'll do, an hour of working on technical exercises, and I'll pick, maybe 12 very specific technique exercises, and, see if I can do all of them in all 12 keys in an hour, and so on and so forth. So having that kind of structure of really planning out your day and planning out your practice sessions and have everything oriented around really clear goals. And then also knowing when to quit, when to move on, so that you're not getting diminishing returns. Because at a certain point, if you're beating an idea to death, at a certain point you need to let go, move on, and come back to it later, so that you're not wasting time. And I apply that to everything in life. And so having balance that goes with that then too, because you need to practice hard and work hard, but you also need to recover, you need to rest. And so that means living a healthy lifestyle, eating right, exercising, spending time with people that you care about, and really limiting your time with social media.
Mm-hmm.
So having that discipline of having a structured practice and unplugging. So as we were talking about earlier, it's tough because it requires a certain amount of kind of selfishness, because you need to put away your laptop, turn off the TV, put away your phone, tell all of your family and friends, don't disturb me. I need 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours of undisturbed time, practice and compose and edit my recordings, because the big enemy of efficiency other than not having clear goals. The other big enemy of efficiency is distraction and fragmenting your attention by trying to multitask, which, the scientific literature is very clear. There's no such thing as multitasking. You're really just switching rapidly back and forth between tasks, which is really inefficient and it's bad for your brain. I mean, we all experience it, right? I don't have the concentration that I had 10 years ago, and I'm even more, I think I'm even more detached than most people because I don't use social media. But even me, just having a cell phone and a laptop, it's changed my brain, So we got to be careful and make sure we set aside time for what they call deep work, right? Where you go really deep and focus on one task all in for a long period of time.
And you don't use social media in a time where everyone uses social media, but it didn't affect your relationships and your interaction with, like managers or, musicians.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of issues with social media. So getting off of social media actually, I think, made me more productive, happier, and drove more traffic to my website. And I saw actually, traffic increase and sales increase of my educational products and my music. So the problems with social media are they're kind of disguised sometimes, but once you see them, it actually is quite obvious once you see through the disguise. So there's several problems. I'll hit on a few of them, both general and specific to musicians. So the general problems are kind of what we already talked about, which are that, when you're on social media, you're just scrolling through and you're looking at little bits of information very rapidly. So you're training your brain to jump from one thing to the next without going deep. And again, the research literature is very clear on that. The average person that will share a link to a news article, for example, without ever having even read the news article. That happens a huge percentage of the shares. And in addition, when people do read, or when they do click the link, because of course they track all of this data, when somebody clicks a news link, the average amount of time they spend is about 10 to 15 seconds. So they're skimming the news article. They're not actually reading it and digesting it.
The same is happening with our posts. So we are getting we are getting fake likes, maybe. You're
getting not quality engagement. You can think of it as a spectrum, right? High quality engagement is somebody shows up to your gig and they sit quietly and they listen, right? Medium quality engagement is they show up to your gig and they kind of pay attention, but they're also having drinks and talking and, and so you can take that same spectrum and think about it in the digital world. So high quality engagement is somebody puts on your recording, turns the lights off, closes their eyes and is listening to the music, low, but listens to the whole track or to the whole album. Medium quality engagement is they listen to your whole album, but maybe they're listening to your album while they're cleaning the dishes or doing their homework, right? Low quality engagement is the vast majority of social media engagement, where people will see the link to your, let's take YouTube, for example. You post a YouTube video of a live gig or of something from your album, whatever. You post a YouTube link. Most people will just hit like without even opening the link. And if they do, they're going to check out a few seconds of it, right? That's low quality engagement. And even worse than that is if you read the end user agreements, which of course nobody does, when you post something on these social media websites, you're surrendering your rights to that intellectual property. You're basically gifting your intellectual property and you're not getting anything in return. You're not getting money from that. You're not getting more gigs and you're not getting more students or anything. I have not lost gigs. I've not had fewer gigs. I've not had fewer people show up to my concerts since I quit social media. As a matter of fact, like I said, I've had a better career since I quit, because part of it is the simple law of supply and demand, right? A lot of people.
And you are in contact with the people that you care about and vice versa, right?
Yeah, of course. And that contact is more meaningful because instead of seeing, an old friend's post on social media and thinking, oh, now I've caught up with that person, I see what they're up to, when you haven't interacted with them in a meaningful way at all. If I want to contact somebody, I have to actually call them or text them. So the quality of my relationships is better. You learn who your real friends are and who actually cares about you and who doesn't, because when you go off grid, sometimes there's people you'll never hear from again, and then there's people who out of the blue they'll text you or call you. But yeah, so there's personal benefits too. For me, the biggest personal issue was I found myself comparing myself to other musicians in a very unhealthy way. Even though I knew it was unhealthy and I shouldn't do it, you can't help yourself on a subconscious level. We're social creatures. We evolved in very complicated social hierarchies, and we're cultured to compare ourselves to others. And so, despite the fact that I'm proud of the things that I've accomplished in my career, I've got over a dozen albums that I've released. Most of them self-released, but electronic albums, modern jazz albums. My two recent jazz quartet albums are out on Fresh Sound New Talent Records, including this one just came out, Simply Begin Again. We got physical copies. We're excited. My quartet I co-lead with Alessandro Fedini, the great piano player from Italy who lives in New York. So, I've got a ton of albums out. Since I quit social media, I've been averaging almost one new electronic record per month that I self-release on a distribution platform. I've got 2 peer-reviewed journal articles in peer-reviewed scholarly publications. I've got a full-time tenure-track university professorship at the rank of assistant professor. I've got over 50 articles I've written for the jazz education website, Learn Jazz Standards. I'm bringing all this up because these are all achievements that I'm proud of. And despite all of these career accomplishments, I found myself experiencing a lot of negative emotion because I would go on social media. I only ever had a Facebook, but I had a Facebook for maybe around 10 years, give or take. And I would see my friends and my acquaintances and my colleagues and my peers, and I would be scrolling through and I'd see, oh, this person's performing with this person, or oh, that person's on tour, or oh, this person released this thing, and I would start to feel bad about myself and think, oh, these people they're having more fun than me, or their careers are more successful, regardless of if they were better or worse musicians than me, or more creative or less creative, or more productive or less productive, because the whole thing is just a giant illusion. It's not reality. You're seeing, the very fake, tailored kind of PR image, a facade really of how people want to present themselves to the world. So not only is it, of course, it's negative to compare yourself to other people in general, but it's not only that, you're not comparing yourself to a real person. You're comparing yourself to an illusion, to a PR, version of just the best of somebody else. It's very unhealthy. So, that being said, there are some challenges because a lot of club owners and festival venues and record labels and sometimes even teaching jobs, they want to see that you have a social media following, because people mistakenly confuse a social media following with a real fan base. So unfortunately, you do have to work a little bit harder to get gigs and to get work sometimes, because you have to prove to these venues and people who would hire you, you have to prove to them that you have a fan base, even though you don't jump on the social media bandwagon, which is silly, because of course you could have 1,000 followers, but that's no guarantee that any of those people are going to come to your gig.
That shouldn't be a condition for us to be hired, right?
Yes, exactly. If it's a music festival, the job of promotion should be the publicity department of the music festival, right? If it's a club date at a restaurant or a bar or a jazz club, the burden of promoting the event and getting audience should be on the venue owners. But even beyond that, if you're a New York jazz musician and you've got 10,000 social media followers, chances are a lot of them are local people, and so when you go to Europe, or if you go to South Florida, or if you go to California, you might not have as many social media followers, and so there's no guarantee that those people are going to show up to your gigs anyway. But that's something to watch out for. So, I'm a bit extreme in that I don't use social media at all. I have a website, I have a YouTube channel, I suppose, and a SoundCloud, and a Bandcamp. But I don't use the main social media platforms. And I'm careful about what I post on YouTube and SoundCloud, because those are free platforms that are very difficult to monetize. I mean, YouTube, you have to get to a very high number of views to monetize your YouTube channel. So I only post on my SoundCloud and my YouTube channel videos and audio files that are not going to directly compete with my other postings. So the way I do that is, for example, I'll only post excerpts of things on those platforms, or I try to only post, like one-off live videos of free improvisation performances. Because, for example, I don't want to post an album on Bandcamp that I'm selling monetized and then have all those exact same tracks for free on YouTube. I try to avoid that. Although sometimes with my distributor, I opt for the YouTube option. But, I avoid social media because I don't want to give up all of my intellectual property, and I don't want to be competing with free versions of myself. So it's supply and demand. And that's another pitfall for musicians, is people operate with the misconception that they'll be more successful in their careers if they have a big social media presence. So they're constantly pumping out content. This illusion that content is king. Well, the problem is now you're creating a supply and demand situation that's not in your favor, right? You actually want scarcity of your material online to a certain degree, right? Because why should I go to your gig, or why should I go to your website and buy your teaching materials, or why should I go download and pay to support your album if I have all this free content? If you're constantly posting videos and status updates and photos and samples of your music. So it's a tough balance, but I think on balance, for me, definitely, my psychological health has improved, my productivity has improved by quitting social media, and I haven't had any of the negative effects that people warn you about, which I think is basically essentially just fear tactics. It's fear mongering, and that's not to say that it was easy, because it was. I mean, and this is proof that there's fear tactics. It was hard for me to even just delete my Facebook. It was emotionally hard for a short period of time. I was a little bit stressed. I was a little bit worried. Am I going to lose friends? Am I going to lose gigs? Are fewer people going to come to my gigs? None of that was true. And the other issue with the mindset of caring about likes and followers is it's a meaningless metric, right? It's a metric that at its foundation cares about quantity, not quality. So I would rather make an album and have, even if it's literally just one person, if there's one person in the world who sits down and listens to the whole album and really loves it and is moved by it and it adds positive value to their life, that to me is way more important than 10,000 people who click a button that says like, but never actually listen to the music, or listen to it for 10 seconds, or listen to one track in the background while they're vacuuming their apartment or something. You see what I'm saying? So that's a problem with social media. I mean, I'm a bit extreme in that I kind of quit it 100%. And I do have a slightly different position than some musicians, because I'm obviously a full-time university professor. But there's probably a middle ground position. What I would recommend is maybe having just a social media page that's just an artist page, and using it as minimally as possible. So don't post a bunch of free content, but use it to announce things like announce gigs, announce album releases, announce. Don't get caught up in the silliness of caring about likes and caring about followers, but just so you have a bit of a presence. Yeah, but it's it's tough, but it's worth it, I think, for a lot of people to at least consider, because like I said, there's a problem with I don't have an inherent problem with social media. I think it could work as a positive force for society, for musicians, but not with the current business model, because the current business model is geared towards the advertising companies, right? So if you use social media, you're not the customer, you're the product, right? The customers are the advertising companies. So basically they're using the users as guinea pigs to collect a bunch of free content and free data about how people behave in order to come up with better and better advertising models that are essentially manipulative. And the side effect of that is that the conversations and everything is just getting more and more negative and worse online. So we're paying a really heavy price in order to help advertisers get better at advertising. So we need to get rid of the advertising model, and then I think the quality of interactions on social media could improve. But until that happens, I think it's a net social negative, and on balance, it's a net negative for people's careers.
Yeah, and I see every day, I mean, more musicians, especially jazz musicians, talking about this. I was watching a concert the other day of Ari Honig playing. Mm-hmm. He mentioned like he's not on social media anymore. Also, he removed his music from iTunes and Spotify because he wants to protect his music and he wants to manage his music in a better way.
And he wants to monetize it. I haven't spoken to Ari personally in years. I played with him a couple times when I was living in New York, but I haven't talked to him in a very long time. But he doesn't have the luxury that I have of having a university salary. So at a certain point, because for a while I was so aggressive in this stance that I also, on ethical grounds, I refused to get distribution for my music. So literally you could only listen to and buy my music from Bandcamp and my website. And I finally caved in because too many people were asking me, oh, where can I check out your music, especially my electronic music? You're not on Spotify, you're not on iTunes, you're not on Google Play, you're not on Tidal, you're not on Amazon Play, you're not on any of these. So I finally caved in and I use a distribution platform. So I am on all of those things now, and my income stream has gone down from the music, but of course it was never the main source of income anyway, and it's not for anybody. But I do understand and respect anybody who wants to, as much as possible, control the digital access to your music, because that's a source of income, and so you want to monetize it. And there's other models too. There's like the Kickstarter model and the patronage model. So it's tough, but in general, I think social media, like I said, is doing bad things. It's fragmenting people's attention. It's causing negative emotion. It's causing unnecessary conflict in society. It's a huge time-wasting, vortex that's just sucking people's time and taking away time from productivity. You're giving up a lot of your intellectual property because anything you post on there doesn't belong to you, and you're letting these advertising companies use you as a guinea pig. So because of all those issues, I abstain.
Your position is a full professor, assistant professor, right? At the University of
Texas, the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley.
Yeah.
So it's a full-time tenure track professorship at the rank of assistant professor. So, with the option to get tenure after 5 or 6 years and to move up the academic ladder and go from assistant to associate and then eventually to full professor.
And you are basically helping to build the jazz program there.
Yes.
So you are kind of like in charge. Can I say that?
Yeah, exactly. So the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley is a relatively newly formed university that was formed by combining two pre-existing universities, University of Texas Brownsville and UT Pan American.
Mhm.
And a merger, which happened about 5 years ago, there was a lot of restructuring, and they had kind of a little bit of a jazz program, and it got dissolved basically. So they brought me on board to do two jobs. So my title is Assistant Professor of Applied Saxophone and Jazz. So I handle the saxophone studio on our Brownsville, Texas campus. And then I also am the sole jazz faculty at the moment. So I'm 100% in charge of the jazz curriculum. So we have a jazz certificate program currently, which is like 1 unit less than a minor. So it's one step below getting a minor. And the cool thing about the certificate program is anybody can take it, including somebody who's not even coming for a bachelor's degree. So somebody could just enroll and just take the units necessary for the certificate and get a certificate as a standalone certificate. Or, as is a little bit more common, you could be an undergraduate music major and you get the jazz certificate in addition to your stated degree. But we're in the process right now. I've already, I immediately shaped the curriculum as I was hired, which was the benefit of starting from pretty much from scratch and being the only jazz faculty. I have essentially 100% control over the curriculum. So right now we're offering, and of course I'm teaching all of it, which is great, jazz theory and musicianship, jazz history, jazz improvisation. We have a combo, jazz big band, and I'm teaching jazz piano as well. So we're in the process of expanding that to be a jazz concentration. So it'll essentially be a major. You would be you could get a Bachelor of Music in Performance with a jazz studies concentration, and we're also developing a graduate program to expand it to the graduate level.
Let's talk, Josiah, real quick about your books. I'm seeing right now you have published 3 books, right?
Yeah. So as I mentioned a while back, I have a little bit of a background in classical composition. So I've got 2 books for the saxophone that are, essentially etudes. One of them is solo etude book for the solo saxophone, and the other one is in the form of duets. So it's duets for like saxophones. So the duet is 10 advanced etudes, 10 advanced duets for like saxophones. And then I have 20 advanced etudes for solo saxophone. If
we have right now a student watching the video and he's doing his bachelor's at the university, do you think are they going to be able to play these etudes?
Yes, they're difficult. They're advanced, but they're definitely doable for highly advanced high school students or to advanced college students. And I think they're also a great challenge and a bit of variety for graduate students. There's a relatively small literature of classical music that's been written specifically with the saxophone in mind. A lot of what we end up playing are like the Bach cello suites or Paganini violin caprices, or even like some of the Karg Ellert works that are essentially like oboe works that are adapted for saxophone and so on. So my goal with the etude book was to basically do 2 things at once. I wanted to take the skill set I developed from studying classical composition and apply it to solo saxophone. So each etude explores a different compositional technique or a compositional concept, and at the same time also explores some technical challenge on the saxophone, like dealing with odd meters or dealing with very wide intervallic leaps, dealing with the altissimo register, and then, like I said, combining those technical challenges with compositional things like, an etude that's a 12-tone piece, or an etude that's all based on the octatonic, the diminished scale, or an etude that deals with mixed meters and odd meters. So it's kind of double-edged in that way. And for the etude book, I did record myself performing each etude. So it comes with audio examples, and hopefully, they're not just great technical studies that are hard, but they're also fun and interesting pieces of modern music as well.
Yeah, that's a good point that you mentioned. Books for saxophone players written by a saxophonist. I mean, people can download your books in your website, basically.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So basically, I mean, if they buy them, it comes directly to me, and I'll email you directly the PDFs of the books, the audio files, often some supporting materials, and then the cool thing is then talking about quality of interactions. It's great to be actually directly in touch with the author, and for me to be great. It's great to be directly in touch with the people who buy the books, so they can pick my brain. The third book, by the way, is the big one. That's my method book.
Creative improvisation.
Yeah. So it's basically two parts. The first part is all about my approach to practicing the saxophone, very detailed, from tone production and articulation all the way up through technique. And there's a lot of written exercises. Then the second part of the book is a pretty comprehensive but broad overview of my entire approach to improvisation. And I emphasize creative improvisation is my approach because I want to actually be able to improvise and not just fall into the trap of memorizing and regurgitating licks. So that starts with basic music theory, intervals and chords and scale chord theory, and then goes all the way through specific exercises to practice over jazz standards, and then all the way to abstract concepts for working on developing your skill set as a free improviser for improvising in a more free jazz or avant-garde context. So it's pretty broad and applies to pretty much any style, really.
Yeah. In addition to be a very accomplished composer, you do a collaboration with a website, a jazz website, right?
Yeah, that's right. So maybe about 2015, I started partnering with LearnJazzStandards.com. It's a great website. There's a ton of resources there. I've written probably somewhere between 50 and 60 articles, I believe, on the blog. So people can definitely check that out. They're on topics ranging from philosophical approaches to improvisation, like, what's the role of transcription and practicing licks, all the way to very specific things, like here's a few scales for you to learn in all 12 keys, and here's some great applications for these scales, or here's a rhythmic exercise, or here's a jazz standard. Let's break it down and analyze it and talk about some improvisational concepts to apply. So those are there, and I encourage people to go and check that out and support the Learn Jazz Standards and my friend Brent Vardstra, who's the guitar player who started that website. He does great work over there.
I read the one about Inner Urge, and it's great, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I put a lot of thought and effort into everything I do. It's just my personality, and so hopefully people get a lot out of those articles. So yeah, just go to Learn Jazz Standards, check out the blog, and maybe go to the search bar, and if you just type in my name, even just my first name, Josiah, you'll probably find my author page. Tons of resources there, and I have links to a lot of that as well on the pedagogy page of my website, where I also have some videos of me teaching and some clinics and that sort of stuff. And that's great material also for people to check out if you're considering applying for university level teaching jobs. In this day and age, when you apply, not only do you need the degree and not only do you need to be a great player, but you need to have teaching experience. And nowadays people want that documented. So very often you have to submit videos of yourself directing ensembles and teaching private lessons and teaching, traditional classes in the classroom, because before universities, before they invest money in inviting you out for an in-person interview, they want to see on video if you actually can teach. So there's some resources there. If anybody wants to see what those videos might look like.
You tour often, every year you do tours in Europe, New York, Miami, Los Angeles.
It was supposed to be a really busy year. So obviously, I perform locally here in South Texas. I've cultivated some relationships with venues, and I was doing some solo electronic gigs and some jazz gigs. And I've toured California. I play before the COVID-19 pandemic. I was playing, at least once every couple months or so in New York. When I was in Miami, playing a lot there. And then Europe, once every year or two, especially when we have a record come out, we like to go and tour over there. And as a matter of fact, right now I was supposed to be in Europe doing a record tour to promote Simply Begin Again. We were going to be playing in Spain, Italy, Germany, possibly the UK. And then also with my duo that I do with Mark Ramirez, the drummer here on campus at UTRGV. He also runs, is part of the International Percussion Institute in Scotland. So we were supposed to be in Scotland in August, giving some clinics and performances. We were also scheduled to go to, I think, University of New Mexico and somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. So yeah, lots of cool stuff on the radar, but unfortunately it's going to be postponed. Just like, I have an art exhibition right now of my paintings, but it's not seeing a lot of traffic because of the stay-at-home orders. We were supposed to have an opening night gala event with live music in the art gallery to celebrate that, but unfortunately that had to be canceled. So just the exhibition of the paintings is going on right now. So in general, to reiterate some of the things I said earlier, make sure you're motivated and passionate, and that you're doing music for the right reasons. Some people get into it for the wrong reasons because they think it's going to make them get more dates, or because they want to be rich or famous, or because they think it's going to be an easy life. Those are all the wrong reasons. So make sure you're doing music for the right reasons, and that you have that framework that helps you stay motivated. Set goals, short-term, long-term, medium-term goals. Make sure they're related, right? Make sure your short-term goals help the medium-term, which help the long-term. Write them down and revise them and read them every so often. Focus on balance in life and being efficient, and diversify your skill set, because virtually nobody makes it just doing one thing in this day and age. You have to have some combination of something like teaching, performing, composing, recording, promoting. You have to be competent with technology of booking your own gigs, creating your own promotional materials, editing your own videos, doing your own digital banners, all that stuff. And think outside the box, be entrepreneurial. You're not going to go anywhere in your career if you just follow the patterns that already exist, And I mean that both in terms of your career path and your music itself, right? Even if you're the best straight-ahead jazz player in the world, there's only so much you can do by just being a straight-ahead jazz player. So you have to think about how you're going to build an audience and build a career and build an identity and a voice for yourself outside of that. And for me, incorporating the digital effects and blending jazz and electronic music has been my attempt to kind of break out of the standard things that people do. And I found a lot of success from that so far, personally and artistically. So,
where do you see, Josiah, yourself in 1 or 2 years?
Well, I'm in academia, and academia is a weird combination of stability and also looking forward. So I'm very happy here at UTRGV. I've got wonderful administration, great support, wonderful students. It's very fun and rewarding and fulfilling to be building my own program. But also, you never know at any given academic year, a position at a university might open up. So I'm always open-minded, like all academics. If something different that interests me opens up, I'd be open to moving and transferring somewhere else. I like enjoying different cultures and living in different parts of the country and in the world. I've already lived in, Los Angeles, New York, Pacific Northwest, Miami, now South Texas. I would love to teach, in Europe, in Mexico, somewhere different. So I'm always open to that. And then otherwise, just plugging away at the usual things that we need to do. I love making electronic music and putting out records. I'd like to perform even more, especially after the pandemic. I'd like to get my touring dates that were postponed or canceled rebooted. And then continue my record of the past 2 years. I've put out once per year a peer-reviewed journal article. That's important for helping secure tenure. And I presented at the Jazz Education Network Conference this year. I'd like to do that again next year. I submitted a proposal. So kind of more of the same, and then hopefully, expanding my reach as a teacher and performer, and continuing to travel and make music, and hopefully try and make the world a better place in whatever tiny way I can manage. So.
One more question. For people that are watching the video right now, if they want to get in touch with you, maybe taking lessons, is that possible? Also in the future, I have a lot of friends that watch the channel, and they are promoters of festivals, competitions, especially in Latin America. So, Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica. So are you willing to, would you go to those places if they invite you?
Absolutely. I'd love to. I'm always available for private lessons digitally, Skype, Zoom, FaceTime. People can contact me directly through my website or my university email as well. It's just my name, Josiah Boornazian at utrgb.edu, but also through my website. I'm happy to do online lessons, in-person lessons, presentations. Like I said, I'm very fortunate. My background is diverse. I can do things on jazz history, on music technology, performing with music technology, jazz improvisation. I can do things solo, guest artist type things. And then also, like I said, I have my New York quartet. I've got my duo with Mark Ramirez. And we do, concerts and then clinics on improvisation. So yeah, I'd be delighted. I love traveling, and I love performing and teaching, and I love meeting new people and experiencing new cultures, and that interchange you get. So I would be delighted to travel and work with anybody who's interested. So have them contact me directly. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Josiah. It's been a real pleasure to spend the whole afternoon today talking about music, and also for you to share with my friends. Thank you so much again.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. You're an inspiration, man. Keep doing what you're doing.